on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go!
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 9 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. My name's Kyle Sutherland, alongside the softball guru, Mr. Jared Hawthorn. Jared, we are in the final week of the 2024 softball season. Crazy that we're here. Crazy that we're about to wrap up year 3 of you and I doing this podcast, and then, of course, Kevin and I doing baseball side of it. But we knew that there was going to be weather in regionals this past weekend, and we've been really blessed overall this season with Mother Nature, for the most part, letting us get games in, and not completely, but overall. But we got through all that stuff, the multiple delays, all kinds of different things, site changes, but then we've got one left as we record on this Cinco de Mayo Sunday evening. We got one more left in Class 4A, and that's the East Region. I will actually be covering that for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the consolation and championship games, but I guess we should be thankful that that's all that we got, just that baseball and softball with all of the weather that we had.
Well, I didn't know if they were going to get as many in as they did, because there were some games that got played in some pretty rough, sloppy conditions this week. And some of them weren't even from the weather. Some of them were for some mishaps. I know of a couple where the sprinklers got left on and they had to deal with that and dry the field back out. So on top of a little rain and then leave the sprinklers on all night, then it's a problem. But they got them dried out. I remember looking at uniforms in that game afterwards, and it looked like they'd just been playing in a big old pig pen or something, mud everywhere. So just a lot of good softball played. Some not great softball played along the way. I saw a couple of games that looked like they got pretty sloppy, but definitely saw some great pitching and some pretty good hitters. So looking forward to seeing how these matchups work out for state too.
I noticed a lot of those white uniforms talking about playing in a pig pit or just a mud pit, whatever. It's those white uniforms are going to need some more Tide. That's all I can say. That is not a sponsorship for Tide. That's just a shameless plug, because that's the first detergent that came to my mind. But if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you have not already, hit that notification button so that way you know whenever we release an episode. Like I mentioned, this is the last week. We'll do our state championship recaps next week, but we will still continue softball and baseball coverage on into the summer a little bit as we get closer to football season. And also, can't forget volleyball that we'll be doing in the fall as well. So YouTube, as well as all the audio podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whichever you prefer. And before we get started, I want to tell you guys about our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, because a properly graded infield is not only important for players' safety, but also the field's health. No company in the state can match the exceptional service and dedication like our friends at Athletic Field Service of Sherwood in Arkansas. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas in Sherwood. From infield renovation, lip removal and edging, mound rehab, laser leveling, and much more, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call Jeremy at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218 today for your free evaluation and consultation, and check them out online or see what they have to offer by searching Athletic Field Service of Arkansas online. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, we got the dirt on your infield. Starting in Class 6A, as we always do, it's going to be like last week as far as 5 and 6A do, just because we've had so much going on in the lower classifications with the postseason starting, I guess, 2 weeks ago now. And honestly, there's just not a lot of new stuff. Like I said last week, in Class 6A, there hadn't been a lot of new stuff throughout the season as far as state title contenders for the most part. It's just been Rogers and Bryant there at the top. Bentonville has snuck in there, but also you can't forget about Cabot, who has been to the past 2 state finals, won a state final in 2019. It was, I was thinking 2020, but we didn't play in 2020. And also Harbor. Harbor started off really strong in year 1 under Coach Randy Ostis, that came back in after a 2-year hiatus from the game. They started off strong. Then they hit a little bit of a slump. And, Jared, when I look at – now they have won 3 in a row, but they hit that slump there in April. And I look at this state tournament, and I still feel the same way that you and I have talked all season. Look, Rogers, they're on that one side of the bracket, and then Bentonville and Bryant. That's a possibility of them meeting in the semifinals. Just throw those names out there because those have been the contenders that we've talked about. But the second round matchup between, let me go find it here. So Harbor's got Jonesboro. I do expect Harbor to get past Jonesboro in the first round, and that will set up a quarterfinal matchup with Cabot. And you look at that slump that I talked about. So Harbor lost 4 of 5 games in April there, kind of like that mid to late April range. That one lone game that they did win was a 7-2 victory over Cabot. I think that was that weekend that Harbor was in town, Bentonville West was in town, played Bryant, and then on the other side of town you had Benton playing in the Benton tournament against a couple of other really good teams. So just looking at this overall, not a thing has changed. I figured that the intriguing matchups would be once you got to the Bentonville and Bryant one. Of course, Rogers, they've got a chance to play what you would think Cabot or Harbor in that semifinal round. But that's the one that I've got my eye on, I think, before we get into the semifinals. As far as the first and second round, Cabot has that bye, and they're waiting on Harbor or Jonesboro, but it will likely be Harbor for being realistic.
I agree with you. I expect it to be Harbor. And then that Cabot Harbor game, to me, is going to be a very I feel like that's just going to be one that's going to be really hard fought. It's going to come down to probably a run somewhere, whether it's whoever gets one early and then holds on to it, or late in the game, whoever can score last. But I feel like it's not going to be more than a run or two, whichever way it goes. I don't know why. Just looking at them and looking at what they've done this year, I feel like that both teams are going to be really scratching to try to get that win, and nobody's going to give up. Everybody's going to be making plays. Defense, that's the kind of games where defenses make great plays, pitchers pitch well. It's just going to be a dogfight.
And also in Class 5A, there was actually a few more things that I wanted to mention about here. Well, really, one main point, and then kind of talk about, a couple of intriguing matchups that I saw. But that first round matchup that I think might be the most even is Valley View and Bologna. And Valley View, I think I've said probably since that Benton tournament that I was referring to just a second ago, when Valley View was one of those teams that played in it. Really, since about that time, when I saw Riley Smith and I was reminded of how good she is in the circle, that was pretty much what I had said about them and BB was, look, they've got great pitching. They just got to get the bats going, and BB really has seemed to do that. BB really has jumped up from kind of maybe a sleeper to a legit contender in my eyes. And then you've got Valley View that, again, I mean, anytime you've got Riley Smith in the circle and you've had some success on offense, it's just when you look at some of those better teams that they've played, they've gotten some good contact. It just hasn't turned into runs always. So that's the biggest thing for them going into the postseason. They shared that conference title, that East title, with Greene County Tech, did Valley View. But then Bologna, they were on that 7-game win streak. Coach Sullivan had talked about that this year was about the lightest that he felt he had been in the circle in his 2-decade-plus career. And they started off a little bit slow, and can't forget as well that they're missing their junior infielder, Lila Toll, that's committed to Baylor. So that's, for the second year in a row, big loss. But they got on that 7-game win streak, got swept by BB by 2 runs each in each one of those games. And then they lost to Mountain Home in a non-conference game earlier this week. So that was by a run. I'm not really holding this 3-game losing streak against them. I still think that Bologna has a chance to be a dark horse just with the back half run that they've been on. But then Valley View right there, that's been right there at the top of the 5A East, one of the better conferences in the state over the past few years. So just looking at it from top to bottom, I think Greenbrier and Benton might be another, even for the most part, evenly matched game right now. I think Benton beat them like 4-1 earlier in the season. But across the board, to me, Valley View Bologna, just on paper, has the best to be in terms of the most evenly matched first-round matchup.
Yeah, I think definitely Valley View Bologna is going to be a evenly matched is a good word for it. It's kind of like we were talking about 6A a while ago. It's going to be one of those games where whoever gets a key hit somewhere, finds a hole in just the right spot. you've got great pitching on the Valley View side. You've got a lot of good hitters on the Bologna side. So, how much are they going to cancel each other out? Is Valley View's pitching going to be able to hold down the Bologna hitters? Vice versa. Valley View has not hit the ball extremely well this year. They can hit it, but they just haven't hit it overall this year like they have in the past. And so, is Valley View's hitting going to overcome, what Bologna has in the circle? There's going to be 2 or 3 storylines within that game that are going to make the determination on who comes out on it. And I don't ever want to bet against Riley Smith. But then on the flip side of it, looking at the hitters that Bologna has, they've got some very dangerous hitters. So it could go either way, and it will be a really evenly matched game, I feel like.
So 5 and 6A are set. 4A is the only, again, as we're recording on this Sunday night, this is the only classification that is not set because we have not completed the East Regional yet. So in that East Regional, it's going to be in the consolation game, Wynn and Clinton, and then in the championship game, it will be Bauxite and Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, Jared, I'll say that when we were talking about it last week, I mentioned this in my bold predictions that I put out, and then I mentioned it on the podcast that I felt like going in that the most competitive, talking about competitive first-round matchups, that it was going to be Heber Springs and Brooklyn. I just felt like that both of those teams, just for the most part, really kind of, I don't want to say they mirrored each other, but just felt like that they had both had some hit some hot streaks at certain points of the season. Obviously, Heber had made a lot of improvement, and then in year one at Brooklyn, Coach Matt Dillon. I mean, you just look at the proven coach that he is. He's really got them rolling, especially here on the back end. So I just felt like that was probably going to be the most evenly won, and Brooklyn absolutely just took it to Heber Springs, and now they're in the regional finals fighting for that one spot. So I don't want to spend a ton of time, on this just since we don't know exactly how this one's going to turn out. But I think Brooklyn was probably the one. I mean, Madison Woolgers, we talked about her so many times, 5 for 5, 7 RBI in that game against Heber Springs. So Brooklyn is definitely the team that I think has shined a lot more than I expected. I pretty much called Bauxite, and I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think in a way you probably have too to win that regional. But they have been the surprise team, at least in terms of what they did to Heber Springs and the way that they did it, and then getting to the final round.
Well, I can't remember what I said on that last podcast, but I think I said I thought it'd be a pretty good ball game, but I maybe gave Brooklyn a slight edge there. Man, Brooklyn absolutely they jumped out and their bats were hot, and they put 10 runs up like super fast. Really put Heber in the hole, and it's hard to dig out of a 10-run hole. So Brooklyn looked really good there. They've looked good so far through that whole regional. They've looked good late in the season. So there's probably in 4A, I don't know that there's anyone hotter than Brooklyn is right now. Bauxite's played really well for sure and won some big games here down the stretch. Bauxite's very deep, but I don't know that I could bet against Brooklyn in the way they're playing right now. So I think that's another one that's going to be a hard fought game, and I don't know that I'd be willing to make a prediction either way on that one. So it'll be good.
We may not know who the best team is, but as we've said all season, and I think that it is no question after what we saw in regionals, that the 4A1 is by far the most supreme conference in Class 4A. Just from that 1 through 4, that was one that I felt pretty confident in saying that they were going to sweep this regional. Not to say that there wasn't some quality teams in the 4A4. We talked about Pottsville some this year. Morrilton also got on that strong run. What was it, winning 6 of their last 7 or 6 of their last 8, something like that. But just with the schedules that the top 4 played, of course, talking about in no particular order, Gentry, Gravitt, Farmington, and Pea Ridge. The schedules that they played, how they played against each other, just the competitiveness there. But I'm not shocked at all that Gentry as a 4 seed came in and did what they did by winning this regional. But these games were lopsided up until the championship round. Of course, they didn't have a consolation in this because it was just the weather was so bad. They went ahead and played the championship. So it's going to be I believe it's going to be Obviously, Gentry 1, Gravett 2, P Ridge 3, and then Farmington 4 is the seeding in the state tournament. So they went ahead, like I said, played the championship, which would obviously make the most sense, and that was a 4-3 win for Gentry. Sorry, Gentry scored the go-ahead run in the 7th inning, but other than that, these were lopsided games, and especially you look at the champions, what they did to Morrilton, the top seed, 10-3. Then they smashed Farmington 12-4. But also Gravett really did something that probably nobody expected. I don't know that it was that nobody expected them to beat P Ridge. Everybody knows that they have talent, but to do it 11-3. I know that everybody has bad games. P Ridge has at that point they had not lost a 4A competition, but it just shows the depth. Actually, let me pull this up. I meant to actually use this for context as well. So I saw this from Lance Nations, who is an assistant coach or the assistant coach for Gentry. So the 4A1 regular season conference standings, these are all top 4 seeds from these different things that I'm going to be looking at. So regular season standings, P Ridge, Gentry, Farmington, Gravett 1-4. So then 1-4 in the district tournament, P Ridge, Farmington, Gravett, Gentry. And then in the regional, Gentry, Gravett, P Ridge, Farmington. Now I know that's a lot of information there, but it's a lot of difference, obviously, because you go from P Ridge first in the regular season standings, then third in the regional standings, and then they had also gotten first in the district tournament, did the Lady Blackhawks. So just shows how deep that conference is, Jared. And then you go to – let's go to the state tournament here. And, well, actually, I'm not going to do that because it's silly to do that when, like I said, the East is not decided. I was going to look at some of those games, some of those matchups, which we don't have yet. But nonetheless, maybe a 4A1 team won't win the state championship. Maybe one team will get it. Maybe it'll be 2 teams again, like it was last year when P Ridge and Gravett squared off against each other. But we can only go off of what we've seen from late February up until now, early May. And as we have said all along, I know it's been beaten into the ground, but it is just extremely impressive how truly deep this conference is.
I don't know how that bracket is going to end up setting up. Of course, there's still a game to be decided there and some things going on. I don't know exactly how that's going to wrap up, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit for us to see, especially if they're on opposite sides of the bracket, for us to see P Ridge and Gravett back in the state championship. Gravett has got great bats. They showed that the other day when they played P Ridge and put that 11-3 win up. They put the ball in play a lot. Of course, now I've heard various stories from different people. I tried to talk to a few people from up there that were witnesses to some of those games, and from what I heard, there was a lot of squeezing pitchers in several of those games up there. So if you start squeezing pitchers and making them throw it down the middle, then the hitters get a huge advantage. And if that allows teams to put the ball in play a lot. So when you take a couple, 2 or 3 elite pitchers and you squeeze them, you make them a whole lot more ordinary in a hurry. And also, everybody has a bad game here and there. Teams that are just dominating people sometimes just have a bad day and, don't make plays and can't get it done. But looking at what they've done all season long, I really feel like there's a strong chance of P Ridge and Gravett ending up going really deep in this. Farmington's a great team. Gentry's a great team. Gentry proved that at any given time they can beat anybody and came through and won that regional. Those 4 teams, to me, are really going to be the teams to beat. And, there's 2 to 3 others scattered from around the state in 4A, but those 4 are definitely very powerful out of the same conference, and they have a chance to all advance, early on if they don't play each other.
Those are the teams for the Northwest. Brooklyn, Wynn, also kind of the teams from the Northeast right now. Bauxite, the team of Central Arkansas. Well, we'll talk real quick about the teams from South Arkansas that we've mentioned many times throughout this year. But Nashville, 7-3 over Monticello in the 4A South regional final. That was actually Monticello's first loss of the year. I believe they are now 24-1, but both teams actually started their number 2 pitchers. Now, Elena Lyle and Nancy Worthington both did pitch, but they did start their number 2 pitchers. And Nashville, they got on them pretty early, and then Monticello, I think they scored 2 runs in the 6th or 7th, so started a little bit of a rally, but just couldn't complete it. But Jared, I'll say this: it's never a bad thing to go ahead and just get a loss out of the way. And I know that this meant a lot to the Nashville seniors in particular, because this game was at Futrell Field, and that's their last game that they're going to play there. So, of course, to win any kind of championship is a good thing to do. But if you're Monticello, I'm really not kicking myself too much, because, you would like to get you got your conference title in the 4A8. You would have liked to have a regional and just continue to be undefeated. But if you don't get your loss out of the way in that game, then your season's over if you get it from this point.
Well, looking at what Monticello has done all year long, they have hit the ball extremely well. There's maybe not a better hitting team in the state of Arkansas, especially for the long ball, that's for sure. I'm just going to say this, I don't like the setup for the way the districts, regionals, state, everything are played. I think that they should schedule for a 1-day break between rounds, because for the teams that have 2 and 3 pitchers, when you're throwing back-to-back days, by the time you get to championship games of districts or championship games of regionals or anything, when you're playing back-to-back 3, maybe 4 days in a row, their pitching is just burnt. And you got that. To me, that is the key reason why you probably saw the second pitchers from each school pitching in that game with Nashville and Monticello. And both of those second pitchers are talented pitchers, not taking anything away from them. But you really would like to see a fresh Elena Lau and a fresh Nancy Worthington go toe-to-toe, and that be the full tilt ball game of what both these teams are capable of. And you're just not seeing that with the way that it's set up. Now, personally, I think that's a AAA issue. I think that's a scheduling issue. Not knocking the AAA, but we can do better. Just make those a week-long tournament, not a 4-day tournament. Give them every other day for a round, and it would work so much better. And it'd probably take out on the rain delays, they'll give you options. You may have to play back-to-back because of a rain delay. But I would love to see the AAA look at spreading those tournaments out over a week rather than condensing them to 3 to 4 days. Nothing against, what's going on, but it would be better options. We would see better softball, especially from the pitcher's point of view. Monticello is amazing. They have absolutely hammered the ball all year long. Nashville's played really good ball here late and started to look like the Nashville of old and got a big win over Monticello. I don't expect Monticello to fall off a whole lot just because they lost the game. They're going to come with fire in their belly, and they're going to come ready to go. And whoever's got to throw against them in that first round, I'm not going to want to be that person, because they're going to be ready to drive the ball all over the field.
Well, speaking of driving the ball all over the field, regionals almost made me forget about this, but they broke the state record for home runs in a single season last week. So they're in the 50s now, but they broke it at 49. I believe it was Smackover's record of 48 from 2015, 2016, something like that. Maybe it was further back, but I'm pretty confident it was Smackover. So big congrats there. I know that this is not really something we're super shocked about. They were really hitting them out last year, and they've continued to do that this year. Maybe they're about 52, 53 by now. I think they've at least hit 4 or 5 more since they set the record. That was on Tuesday in a 7-0 victory against Conway. Pretty confident of that. So I better stop throwing out all this stuff without looking at it. But
I don't know what they put in the water in Monticello, but whatever it is, I need to get some of it and feed it to our high school team, because I'm telling you, it's crazy the way they're hitting the ball down there. I mean, nobody's hitting the ball, especially long balls, like they're hitting it. So,
well, I was talking to
they just some strong kids down there.
Yeah, there is. I was talking to Boomer Brown, head coach at Nashville, so he had obviously been pretty tied down all day Saturday. So he called me on Saturday night to get an update. Let's see. I think it was, it was against Conway that Monticello set that record. And he was kind of getting some updates from me. And, I've only seen Monticello on Game Changer this year. If you see him on Game Changer, it's pretty much the same thing in a way, but I just kind of asked him his thoughts, and that's what he he pretty much brought up that 2022 team of his that made it to the finals, lost 2-1 to Valley View. He's like, that just reminds me of the batting lineup because there just wasn't a easy out in there. Now, Riley Smith had something to say with that about that in the state finals, but in the big picture, that's pretty much how it was, and that's what we see from Monticello. So, these are definitely two of the additional ones on top of Brookland and Bauxite that I think could challenge. Obviously, I mean, that's why we've had them in the Super 7 pretty much all year, at least Monticello I know has. But I will say this about Nashville, and I know, Jared, that I'm always high on Nashville every single year, and a lot of it is because I know this time of year they play really well, so I trust them maybe a little bit too much sometimes during the middle parts of the season and everything, but you just cannot ever count a Boomer Brown team out. Now, Monticello is kind of one of those newer teams that's starting to really come up. They've got over 50 wins in the past 2 years, but they don't have the history that Nashville has. But they're, again, just kind of an up-and-coming team. But Nashville, we know what Boomer Brown can do. He's a state championship coach. He's done it for many, many years. So we've talked as much as we talked about Monticello being a contender all year. Nashville has been kind of one of those that's been a wait and see, but they're showing that they are ready to contend just like everybody else.
Well, for sure, Nashville has history on their side, and they are a proven winner for years on top of years. Just looking at all the 4A storylines, I mean, I wouldn't want to bet against Emery Boland's arm. I wouldn't want to bet against Gravit's bats. I wouldn't want to bet against the way Brooklyn's playing right now or the big time power and ability that Bauxite has. You don't want to bet against Monticello's bats. You don't want to bet against Nashville's ability to win big ball games when it matters. I mean, everywhere you look, there's a program in 4A right now that looks like, hey, they could go win the whole thing if you really look at it. So I would say 4A right now is probably the most evenly matched across the board that has been in a long time. Now, I do feel like those 4 teams from up north have a little bit of a competitive edge because they had such a deep conference and they, just battled all year against each other. I think that gives them a little bit of a competitive edge because of their strength of schedule, but there's a lot of good teams in 4A right now.
Down in Class 3A, actually, before we get into 3A, I want to remind you guys about our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. A properly graded infield is not only important for player safety, but also the field's health. No company in the state can match the exceptional service and dedication like our friends at Athletic Field Service of Arkansas in Sherwood. From infield renovation, lip removal and edging, mound rehab, laser leveling, and much more, Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. Call Jeremy at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218 for your free evaluation and consultation, or check them out on Facebook and see what they have to offer. Also online by searching Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, we got the dirt on your infield. So down in Class 3A, we always know that the 3A1 regional tournament is going to be an extremely competitive one, especially when you've got 3 Division I arms out of the 8 teams that are playing in it, and it certainly lived up to the hype. Now, I know that the championship game, pretty much the whole entire tournament was a Hackett Invitational. They ran through just about they did run through all their games. What was it, 25-1? I think they outscored their 3 opponents. But that semifinal matchup that you knew was likely going to happen between Lexi Franklin, Brinkley Morton, Lincoln ends up winning it 3-2 in extra innings. A great effort by both Brink and Lex. Maybe the last time that we're going to see those, if we do see them again, it's going to be in the state finals. But I had mentioned that it's really about, as far as the finals go, who's going to have enough gas against Hackett. And I think that was the case. Not to take anything away from Hackett. They've been, arguably the top team in the state all year. Been one of those, I'd say, top 3 throughout the entire year. But there was a lot of energy poured into that semifinal game, Jared. And, I mean, I think you look at Boonville in the 3rd place game, and it was probably the same type thing. Most times, if they play Valley Springs 9 or 10 times, they're going to win 9 times. I feel pretty confident in saying that. But that game just took a lot of energy out, I felt like.
Well, I agree with you 100% on the Boonville Lincoln game. I think that everything that was in both of those young ladies throwing for those two teams, they left it all on the field, and they went, just went out there and competed at a really high level. And Brinkley Morton is an amazing player. Lexi Franklin is an amazing player. Mackenzie Freeman is an amazing player in her own right over on the Hackett side. But those two meeting up in the semifinals really definitely, we get right back into that thing that we just talked about a while ago. I hate the schedule for the way these are set up with them playing back to back days and no rest in between. It really takes the best softball away, in my opinion, especially on the pitching side. Uh, and I will always argue that I think that these big games should have a day in between so that you can rest pitching. But looking at Mackenzie Freeman and what she has done year after year after year, she has proven that she is just one of the best arms in the state, and she got it done all the way through when she pitched on her side. I do think they had a little bit easier route to get there and maybe didn't have to expend quite as much energy. But she got it done when it mattered in the championship, and she pitched a really good game. And they put Lincoln away. I think it was 7-0 in the championship. Uh, but I just feel like Lincoln used all the gas they had to get there, and then they didn't have a whole lot left for the championship. So I
Well,
just hate seeing the schedule.
no, I'm with you. Well, and another loaded regional that becomes an issue. Well, I'm not saying that it became an issue for these teams, but just to make your point, these day after day games, and you have a loaded one like you had the 3A3. I was truly heartbroken for Lamar. Like when I saw Lamar and Harding Academy were playing in the first round of the 3A3 regional, I was like, man, one of those two teams is not going to go to the state tournament. And look, I'm looking at the bracket right now, and I'm looking at it, and Lamar is better than some of these teams. I'm not going to say names, but I'm just saying Lamar is better than some of these teams. Now, does that mean that these teams don't deserve to be here? Not at all. Lamar lost their first round game, so they didn't advance, plain and simple. But it just shows the depth of the 3A5 in particular to me that we've mentioned a second ago, and we've gone on and on about the 4A1 and 3A. That's pretty much the one that we've spoken of is Region 5. But overall, just looking at this, it was kind of interesting because Atkins came into the regional tournament last year as the 3 seed. They lost in the finals to Mayflower. This year they come in as the 3 seed. They beat Harding Academy in the finals. Well, if you wanted a rematch of last year, Boonville and Atkins, you get it. You're just not going to get it in the finals. You're going to get it in the first round. So we certainly will not have a rematch of that, at least in the state finals. We will get it in the actually the first game. It's the opening game at 10 a.m. on Thursday for Class 3A. So really tip-top matchup there. I think also, too, Jared, I'm looking at these just through the first round here. You got that one at the top, and then the nightcap, Lincoln and Mayflower. So you got two big-time matchups right there in the first round, and does not stop there. But last week, I'll say this, then I'll hand it over. Last week we talked a lot about DeWitt. And they tore through their regional just like I expected that they would. They've torn through their season after the 1-2 start or 2-1, whatever it was. I think it's now a 20-game win streak that they're on. Them and Salem. Now, I think that DeWitt has a little bit more of a better strength of schedule than Salem. Look, Salem, they're undefeated right now. You can't take that away from them. But like I'd said last week, Salem and DeWitt, they haven't seen what Mayflower, what Atkins, what Hackett, Lincoln, Boonville. The facts are that even Lamar, I would probably even put Harding Academy in that category. They just haven't seen that. Again, please don't mistake me. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that they're not as good of a team. They just have a little bit more to prove, I think, right now. So those are the two teams that I'm watching. I've been watching them for a while. Salem and DeWitt. I want to see what they do, just kind of looking at their draw right now. So Salem's got Genoa Central. The winner of that game will get Lincoln Mayflower. I think Salem matches up pretty well. I haven't seen a lot of Genoa Central, to be completely honest with you, but I think that's probably a pretty good matchup. DeWitt, I really do like their draw. They've got Rivercrest. I like them in that game. Now they've got the winner of Harding Academy and Valley Springs. Harding Academy playing some really good ball right now, so that'll be interesting. But that's kind of the two that have been in the back half of the Super 7 on the outside looking in, Salem and DeWitt. I'm looking at how they do because I think that those other teams that I just mentioned, they've proven themselves. Doesn't mean that they're going to advance. They might lose in the first round. But I think that Salem and DeWitt are the teams that really have the most to prove out of 3A.
Well, we've been talking about strength of schedule for the entire time we've been doing this. From the first podcast on, we've talked about it. We've preached strength of schedule. And I just got to say that DeWitt and Salem, as good as they look, they are not nearly as battle tested as some of these other teams. Not to say that they may not prove it when they get their chance. They may go, hey, we're the team that we look like we are, and we're going to go compete with anybody, and they may go roll through this thing. But they haven't been as battle tested with the same strength of schedule that some of these other teams are. Mayflower and Atkins, man, they have absolutely been battle tested, no doubt about it. There's a lot of those teams that they just schedule a load of heavy hitters, and so they get to see it all year long, and it helps prepare them when they get down to the state tournament. I really like what I've seen out of DeWitt, and I think it's Harley Grammer that has been playing extremely well for DeWitt.
Freshman.
Just hitting the ball. Yeah, freshman, and just absolutely crushed the ball during regionals. I think she hit 4 home runs during regionals. Just insane stuff that's been happening with that player. What I've been seeing, catching bits and pieces off of Facebook and Twitter and different things. I don't ever want to bet against the team, especially when I haven't seen them in person. I think DeWitt and Salem both have pretty decent matchups for their first round and should be able to advance. But when they start running into those other teams, we're just going to find out. I'm not going to say that they're not going to win, but we're going to find out if they're as good as advertised, if they truly are, if they've got that talent and that ability to play with the big-time teams. By the second round, we're going to find out.
And before we get out of 3A, speaking of Boonville, got to give a shout-out to Lexi Franklin. 1,000 career strikeouts she hit actually in the Lincoln game, I believe it was. So pretty remarkable. You don't see 1,000 unless she's thrown a lot of innings, but you don't see that very often. So it's pretty incredible.
Absolutely incredible. That is just a testament to being able to stay healthy and continue to set people down at the rate that she has. She is an amazing athlete. From all references and people that I know that have talked to her and know her, and the once or twice that I've seen her, just seems like a really great young lady, a really hard worker, and she absolutely deserves a lot of recognition for hitting 1,000 career strikeouts. I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's only either one or two other players that have ever passed 1,000 career strikeouts in Arkansas.
That's not many.
I know there's one other for sure, and I think there might be a second, but I mean, she's definitely putting her name way up in the history books with that. And she's not done yet. You know, she's possibly as many as 3 games or 4 games away from being done. So she may even be, at the rate that she strikes people out, she may be getting on up there close to 1,100 before it's over with.
Yeah, I know. You never know with her. Then heading out of 2A, I've been waiting to talk about this one, those CAC Lady Mustangs. I'm a very proud alum, and but just as a fan watching high school softball, you got to be extremely impressed. Jared, this team, look, 1-6 on April 15th. Haven't played a lot of games. They've been injured. Had to replace a pitcher that is now playing Division I softball, and so I mean, you gotta hand that to him. Just with this, I'm amazed. I'm honestly speechless. Just 1-6 to winning 7 of their last 8. So they come into the district tournament as a 5 seed. They earned the number 4 seed for the regional tournament, then beat a number 2 seed, and they beat 2 number 1s. Those 2 number 1s being Magnet Cove and Quitman, who have been in the top 4 for the Super 7 for as long as I can remember. So, and then you think about the Magnet Cove game. It was 3-3, go into extra innings. They win, 7-5, I think it was. But sophomore Kayla Myers, I don't know if there's anybody that's had a better regionals in any classification than what she did. 3 complete games in the circle, 10 for 13 at the plate, 7 RBI, 2 doubles, and 2 home runs. Sorry if I left anything major out, but that is incredible. Just to do that, I mean, we know that CAC, Ella Blakely's been a staple for them right behind the dish for a while. We knew that coming in this year that they were going to have a lot of talent maybe away from the circle. And we just – it's not that we're going to have anybody pitching. It's just we didn't know what it was going to look like. And Kayla was one of those that is a phenomenal athlete, but she's not a natural pitcher, but has really just, I mean, obviously been incredible at the plate, but has done her job in the circle. I know that you and many other travel coaches have told me in particular, just maybe 3 or 4 actually in the last few days, that have said she is either the toughest out on the travel ball scene, if not the toughest one of. But a complete team performance. You don't put kind of runs together like this, like they have. But when you have a player stand out like that and put a team on your back, essentially, you just can't say enough. And what a run that these Lady Mustangs are on right now.
Well, if you follow my Facebook at all, you're going to know that everything you just said is basically an echo of what I've put on my Facebook the last few days. Kayla Myers is just, she's amazing. I mean, she is mind-blowing as a hitter. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. Absolutely, in my opinion, the toughest out in the state, the toughest kid to call pitches against. I mean, I commented this to Kayla's dad and to Ella Blakely's dad. Jaylee held her to a 444 batting average, and she hit 1 3-run home run on Jaylee in 9, I think it was 9 at-bats this year against her. And normally, if Jaylee gave up a 444 batting average and gave up a home run, especially a 3-run home run, I'd have been like, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to tell you, against Kayla Myers, that's outstanding pitching. She even struck her out one time. But with Kayla Myers, if you look at her overall, she bats about 800. So, she's usually putting up 700 or 800 as a batting average and like a 800 plus on base percentage. And she's hit 3 or 4 home runs in the last 2 weeks from a slapper point of view. The kid, you can't throw a single pitch that she can't get her hands to, it seems like. You try to jam her hands, she finds a way to get a bat through it and poke one over second base or something. You try to throw her high and away, she drives it in the left field gap. You try to do anything else, she can drop a bunt down the third base line and beat it out because she's so fast. I'm telling you, the kid is ultra talented. I definitely think that she is probably the toughest out in the state of Arkansas. If there's another one, I mean, there's several great hitters. I mean, 4 or 5 different ones come to mind. But as far as just being able to get their hands to every single pitch that you try to throw against them, Kayla, in my opinion, is the best hitter, toughest out for just getting contact, getting on base. And what she's done in the circle for them this year, not being a natural pitcher, to really kind of coming into her own as a pitcher, especially late in the season, and not early in the year, from what I could tell, she was just getting the ball over the plate and basically letting the defense work. Well, by late in the year, she was really starting to move the ball and change speeds, and she was getting a lot higher strikeout numbers and getting, 8, 10, 12 strikeouts a game. And you're absolutely right. They've got great players everywhere. Ella Blakely is one of the best catchers, if not, possibly the best catcher in the state when you combine her bat with her ability behind the plate. They've got the Wilbanks kid and the Walker kid and the Browning kid and the Broderick kid and the Jansen kid. I mean, they're all good ball players. It's not like those two with Kayla Myers and Ella Blakely are all that they have. There's a lot of great bats in that lineup and good ball players, but those two have just been outstanding. And CAC, without a doubt, as much as I hate it and as much as we ran into that hot streak and it cost us, CAC is the hottest team in the state at any level right now.
I think it's hard to argue. And also Mansfield, no surprise, they won the West region, and then in the South, a little bit of a surprise, but kind of not, because they were a 1 seed. But Rison went through the South regional, tore through, and absolutely, I mean, you could say they tore. I don't want to. Well, I don't want to say they tore them apart. That's not necessarily a good phrase. But they thumped Woodlawn. I mean, it was 9-0. I don't think a lot of people saw that. Now, Lily Faye McWhorter, she had been out. Of course, we'd seen her in some games in street clothes. She was back in the circle and back was playing. So it was good to see her back. We'll see what happens with the state tournament, but definitely it was good to see her back. I know that they were definitely happy to see her. Were the Lady Bears, but they do go down to Rising 9-0 in the South Finals. But wanted to touch on the North Regional as well, Jared, because look, this was one that I said, and I think probably many expected that Riverside would run through just because we've seen what they've done to 2A opponents all year. But look, they were the favorite coming in and they earned it, but there were a lot of close matchups. You look at the BIC, Buffalo Island Central, who hosted their game. Des Arc beat them 1-0. Carlisle over East Poinsett County 4-3 in the semifinals. Then Riverside, of course, 1-0 over Des Arc. So it was very clear. These teams, if you made it to the semifinals, you were tired. I mean, there was a lot of effort put into these games. There was effort put in all over the state, but it just seemed like this was one of the more intense games, especially the finals. You look at that game, Riverside and Carlisle back in was it October? October? It's like we're in the fall. April 16th, I think it was. And it just wasn't close. I mean, Carlisle was not able to play with them. Riverside did whatever they wanted to do. Was the complete opposite in this one. Carlisle actually got the early lead. Katie Ridge then answered with the home run, and then it was back and forth, and Carlisle was right there on the verge of walking it off. So you got to give credit there to the Lady Bison. I mean, look, this was just two teams gutting it out, leaving it all on the line. And, I mean, I think it was actually they had runners on the corners with like either no outs or an out, did Carlisle, and Riverside was able to get out of it. But I know Carlisle's definitely kicking themselves because, look, they got free bases, 7 of them, 4 via hit by pitch, 3 by walk. But just the fact that your season is still going, you took the defending state champions, number 1, about as close as anybody in 2A has this year. I mean, Des Arc was really close, and there was a couple of others. But right there in the regional championship, in Riverside's backyard to an extent, right there to the wire. So, look, I said that the 2A6 really wasn't that deep this year. I've been proven wrong there. I think Carlisle I shouldn't say that it wasn't deep. I mean, we knew that Des Arc and Carlisle had quality teams. But again, going back to the strength of schedule, Des Arc has had a tougher strength of schedule than Carlisle has. But both of these teams have proven that they're quality. So I think when you're Carlisle, you look at it like, man, we missed some opportunities there, but you still got your season going, and you went toe-to-toe right there with the defending state champions who have dominated 2A competition for the most part this year.
Well, looking at Carlisle, I'll speak to them first. I'll just say the biggest question mark I've had for Carlisle, because I know they have some really great players. I know they have a good program there. They got a lot of good things going. They've won a lot of games this year, but I haven't seen the strength of schedule that we talk about all the time. Like, I haven't seen them play very many strong teams this year to know what they really had. Well, now they've, here in this regional, they had a couple of those games against quality opponents, and they came out, they got the win against EPC, and then they took Riverside all the way down to the wire there and had a chance to walk it off at the end. And to me, Carlisle, for me personally, earned a lot of respect with what they did in the regional and proved to me that they are capable. My big question mark for them was their pitching. I knew they had hitters. I knew they had a good defense. They're well coached, but did they have the pitching to go deep? Well, it seems like the pitching has really made a turn and has gotten stronger down the stretch. And, late in the season, especially with a team of 2 pitchers, sometimes they just kind of feed off each other and they throw a little better as they go down the stretch of the season. And it seems to be coming together for Carlisle, and they're proving that they are the team that their record reflected and that they can play with a lot of people for sure. Des Arc, I'm going to tell you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say with Des Arc, they absolutely, with Kaylee McDonald and what they've got going, they can play with anybody. They gave Riverside all they wanted. That was a pitcher's duel. I can't remember the totals, but it was something like 30-something strikeouts between Claire Womack and Kayla McDonald in that semifinal game. I mean, that's insane. And then I would say probably, you know, everybody was gassed in that final game, for both teams. So they were both just, fighting and scratching and clawing to get a win, and it was a really good ball game for the championship. I would like to see all of them come in fresh and see how they come out when they play each other.
Well, and I love that North region is matched up with the Central. You got some great first-round matchups. Riverside Bigelow, you've talked about Bigelow a lot. I know you played them, and a very competitive team. And then Central Arkansas Christian, well, I'm sitting here saying their legal name, CAC, and East Poinsett County, EPC, you'll match up. I think I definitely like CAC in that one. EPC, look, they're always they're not a team, they're a program, but they definitely it's proven, at least up to this point, that EPC just hasn't been what they have been in the past. I think they'll get back there, but I just don't know, if this is the year that they get out of the first round. But then you've also got Carlisle, Mount Vernon, and Nola. Man, there's no telling how many home runs there could be in that one. Magnet Cove and Des Arc. So I really like that first round. It's, because you don't see a lot of great first round matchups, but those four right there, I can get all in on.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are there's a lot of parity in 2A, a lot of good competition in 2A. Magnet Cove has proved they could get it done all year long. CAC is as hot as anybody. Carlisle's playing well. Des Arc's playing well, and Kayla McDonald's proved to be maybe, if not the best pitcher in the state, one of the top 2 or 3 for sure. Just everywhere you look, there's another storyline, like what we were talking about earlier about, somebody could make a run. And I wouldn't bet against CEC right now, as hot as they are. And then the others, they've just proven that they can play with anybody. So there's a lot of great matchups there, and it'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to try to make some trips and go watch some of those in person.
And last but not least, in Class 1A, going to recap pretty much some of the same things that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. So the 1A4 regional, another classic matchup between Taylor and Bradley. Taylor won it 2-0. Look, Bradley is 0-3 against Taylor. Taylor's 3-0 against Bradley this year, however you want to slice it. But these are two pretty evenly matched teams. I definitely feel comfortable in saying that. Anytime it's Taylor Buford and Ainsley Moore, but I know that Taylor has the edge this year. This time last year, we were coming into the state tournament, and they had split 2-2. Once in the regional finals, I believe, 2 in the regular season, or 3 in the regular season, 1 in the DMAC, 2 in conference. So they were 2-2 coming into this game last year. Right now, Taylor has that edge coming into the state finals, assuming that they were to meet again. But Taylor might have that edge, but don't count Bradley out. Now, Bradley has a chance. If you look at the bracket for the state tournament bracket, Bradley has a chance to meet up, and this would be an absolute banger of a round 2 matchup with Concord. Now, Concord, in the past few years, over and over, we've discussed the 1A2 and how deep it is, and it still is. Obviously, they swept the 1A3 conference in that regional, but Concord has separated itself. Think it's Concord maybe about, where's my camera? Right here, Shirley about right under them, and then maybe like Viola West Side about right here, basically depending on what day it is. But definitely Concord has proved itself a step above the rest in that conference, but they came out on top again. They played Shirley again in the finals like they did in the district finals, but this was a lot closer. Shirley was able to keep it to 4-2. So I think that Shirley on their best day can play with some of the best of them. And Jared, you just look at that first round of the state tournament. So they're matched up with the 1A1. That was County Line and Scranton. I think Jasper's in that mix. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that I think that those teams that we just talked, Concord, Westside, Greers Ferry, Viola, Shirley, they're definitely more battle tested. We can say that as far as the fact goes. So they swept the 1A2 regional. I don't think it's a far cry to say that they could do that at least in the first round. But if they are to do that, it sets up likely match with Westside and Taylor. These are quarterfinal hypothetical matchups. Taylor and Westside, Midland and Shirley, Concord and Bradley, and then Viola, and I'd probably say Hampton over Wonderview in that one. But Bradley Concord in the second round, we're spoiled if we get that.
That's exactly what I expect to happen. Concord Bradley in the second round. I think I would give Bradley the edge just because they've had to play Taylor 3 times already this year and they're so battle tested. But I'm going to tell you, Concord's a great team. They could easily get to the state championship. And Bradley is the one thing standing between them, in my opinion. Bradley on the other side, when Ainsley Moore's on, she can beat any team in the state of Arkansas. So Ainsley is a special talent, and a 2-0 game that Taylor beat them in regionals. Ainsley Moore threw great ball, and Taylor was fortunate to get a couple of runs across and get that win. Taylor just a program, and I feel like on that side, it's going to be Taylor all the way, and then whoever gets there can give them fits maybe in the state championship. But it's going to be, I feel like personally, Concord or Bradley is going to get there, and it ought to be a great state championship with Taylor and one of those two teams.
40 games in the first round start on Thursday, weather permitting, of course. We're hoping that we can get through this on Monday. Now, if you're listening on Tuesday, then obviously that's already happened. But the 4A East finish up that baseball and that softball. So hopefully we can get through the rest of the season without anything that is too terribly crazy. But almost at an hour here, so kept it under that. Jared, if you got anything else.
We got to shut it down or Will's going to get upset with us.
Well, so the thing is that we've run into, I think Will was obviously being facetious, but the file is so, it's literally, if I load it at 59:59, it literally will take 10 minutes less than if it's an hour or more. So I don't know. We love to squeeze as much content as we can to try to get as much kids and much teams exposure that we can, but we do try to keep it reasonable. But at the same time, we know that our voices get old. And some of you only listen to certain segments and certain classifications. We understand that too. But no, in all seriousness, it has been a year that we had to call some audibles. It's been a lot of fun, and we got one more left for the high school year. And then we're going to get into some other fun stuff here once we get into the early parts of the summer. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to continue some baseball and softball stuff before we really dig into football this summer. Obviously the College World Series is going to go on into June, so we wanted to try to keep some stuff up. We're not going to go fully into detail yet on that, but we'll definitely tell you more about it probably next week as we wrap up the high school season. But, Jared, unless you got anything else, we'll go ahead and get out of here.
I think that's it. Just ready to see a lot of good softball at state. That's
right. And you can follow naturalstatesports.com. Now, we're not going to have any rankings this week just because everybody's got their seedings in state, but I'm going to have some stuff. I'll probably have some quick hits by the time that you listen to this from the regionals. I might write some of those up. I don't know, kind of depending on what my schedule looks like, but we will definitely have breakout coverage. I'll be posting stuff on my Twitter page. We'll be posting stuff on the Natural State Sports Twitter and Facebook pages. So definitely follow that, Natural State Sports, on the social media platforms. And like I said, make sure you subscribe to Arkansas Preps Weekly. If you have not already, you can do that if you're watching on YouTube, and hit that notification button. And you can also subscribe on the audio versions as well. Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen, we are there. But other than that, we hope everybody has a fun and safe state tournament week. We will see you next week when we recap that and get ready for I've been saying that we've only got one more left. I guess we got two more left because we got to recap the state final. So we got 2 more weeks left of this. So we will see you next week when we preview the state finals and recap the state tournament. For Jared Hawthorn and all of us here at Natural State Sports, my name's Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you next week.